Previously on Ty's Hot Mess History. And because you tell me that you like seeing the newspapers from the periods that I cover, I wanted to show you this. It's something from a local newspaper about the Ingalls family, and it shows that the same way that TV audiences were hooked on Mary's story and hoping that she would somehow miraculously pull through and not go fully blind, so were the townspeople. From the Redwood Gazette on June 12, 1879. Miss Mary Ingalls is recovering, but slowly. Her eyesight, which she had almost lost, is improving as she gains strength. End quote. Well, we know that in the end, her eyesight did not improve. And here, 10 years later, in the August 21st, 1889 edition of the Sioux City Journal, you can see that Mary is listed among the graduates of the Home for the Blind. And just a little strange coincidence, if you look 2 lines below Mary's name, there are 2 Olsons who graduated too. Even though the Olsons were a fictional name Michael Landon created for the show, there's their last name. But I'll get into more of that into the next video. There's something more to that connection, and it's really interesting. I'll talk about it in my next Little House on the Prairie video. And here we are. So let's get into that connection. But first, a correction on myself because I misspoke about a detail in that video. I said that the Olsons were made up by Michael Landon, and while he made up the over-the-top, comically snooty and villainous characters that his Little House TV version gave us in the 1970s and 1980s, the way that I phrased it was not quite right. Laura Ingalls Wilder invented the name Olsen herself in the books, decades before the show existed. The other thing that Michael Landon added and changed were the parents' first names, Nels and Harriet, because in Laura's books, the parents are only ever Mr. and Mrs. Oleson. Here is what Laura did not change. Nellie and Willie. Those were their real first names. She kept them exactly as they were and changed the family's last name from Owens to Olsen. So to be clear, the Olsen family name is completely fictitious, Laura Ingalls' invention, with Michael Landon adding a little something extra for the TV audience. William Henry Owens and Margaret Owens ran the general store in Walnut Grove, Minnesota. They had a daughter named Nellie and a son named Willie. And on the afternoon of July 3rd, 1880, the real Willie Owens was 10.5 years old, and he got himself into a horrible situation that contributed to his going blind only a year after Mary Ingalls went blind. At least for now, my plan is to review and recap the new Netflix Little House reboot here with you on Sunday live streams. I asked if you all were interested in discussing the Little House reboot, and 56% of you said yes to that. So, in case some more video content and live streams on this new Little House on the Prairie interests you, that's what I'll be discussing for the next few weeks. If the show holds our interest, we'll stick with it. And we also have the Gilded Age coming up any day now. Plus, I cover scandalous history in general. If you like that, make yourself at home here. Now, on to why you are here. Little Willie Owens, the other blind child in Walnut Grove. If you go looking for what happened to Willie Owens, you'll find the same story copied across genealogy pages and fan sites. The same story told over and over for years. Older boys talked him into fetching firecrackers from his parents' store. They hid them in a paper candy bag under some gravel. When the fuse seemed to go out, they sent little Willie over to blow on it. I could not find one single source behind any of that. No document, no record, no newspaper, no nothing. So I did a little digging. And what I did find was the account written down at the time on the front page of the Redwood Gazette on Thursday, July 8th, 1880, in the Walnut Station column. You always tell me in the comments that you like seeing these original news stories, so I'm going to show you this one and read it to you the way it was printed. Quote, "A terrible accident occurred at this town, July 3rd, in which 2 little boys came near losing their lives. About 1 o'clock in the afternoon, a number of little boys obtained some powder unknown to their parents and were engaged in putting it in an oyster can, throwing in a firecracker, and then placing a stone over the top of the can and waiting for the explosion. Although seen at this work by a number of men who warned them of the danger, no one thought serious enough of the matter to take the powder from them until Dr. Hoyt was informed of it and started for the place. He had only gone a few steps when the fatal explosion took place. The boys had placed the powder in the can, wrapped in paper, and thrown in their lighted firecrackers, which died out, and when they found out that was the case, Willie Owens, a little boy of W.H. Owens, aged 10.5 years, lit a match and bent over the can to light the firecracker. The powder, of course, ignited instantly, and he received the contents in his face. Thus, in a moment of time, a dear little boy was changed to a most pitiful sight, with scarcely one feature of a human creature visible in his face. The injuries are confined to his face, left ear, his neck, extending down on the left side of his breast a short distance. The flesh was not torn away, only burnt and swollen. Llewellyn Hall, son of F. Hall of this place, aged 14, was one of the number engaged in this dangerous play. He had gone off a few steps and was turned facing the can. He received injuries, but not very serious, although he has suffered a great deal. Dr. Hoyt immediately took little Willie in charge, and under his skillful management, the little boy is doing well and bearing his suffering with remarkable courage. Dr. Hoyt telegraphed for Dr. Farrow of Tracy to come to his assistance, but being sick, he could not come. He then sent for Dr. Crandall of Lamberton, but he was out of town. Mr. Owen had not returned from Redwood Falls, where he had been sent as a delegate from this town to attend the county convention. It was after sunset Saturday evening before he learned of his little boy's sad misfortune. The doctor cannot tell yet in what condition the little sufferer's eyes are, but he thinks the sight is not destroyed. The swelling is going down so fast that the worst will soon be known. Dr. Crandall called with Dr. Hoyt to see the patient on Sunday afternoon and informed the parents of the little boy that it was apparent he was receiving the best medical treatment that it was possible for him to have. The people of this village show their deep sympathy for the sorrowing family by rendering all the assistance they possibly can, for which Mr. and Mrs. Owens feel very grateful. We trust this terrible accident may prove a warning to all children who hear of it, and that it may hinder them from engaging in such dangerous sport." End quote. Now, I'm not exactly sure why this column called it a fatal explosion. It doesn't seem that anyone died, but clearly what the little boys did was dangerous. The paper says William H. Owens, Willie's father, was away at Redwood Falls as a delegate to the county convention when this horrible accident happened. And you don't have to take the correspondent's word for it, because on the same front page of that same edition of the Redwood Gazette, it shows this: that Willie's father was attending the Redwood County Republican Congressional Convention is written up in full, with a delegate list printed out. It met at the courthouse in Redwood Falls on Friday, July 2nd. Read down the list, and there he is, North Hero W.H. Owens. Not only are both stories on the same front page, they're in the same column. The convention news of July 2nd is at the top, and Willie's horrible accident is at the bottom. Willie nearly burnt off his face the next afternoon. His father didn't learn of it until after sunset that same evening. Six days later, the New Ulm Review picked it up and ran it for its own readers, crediting the Redwood Gazette. New Ulm was, and is, about 53 miles east of Walnut Grove. By wagon, that was a 2-day trip, but both towns sat on the same railroad line, the one that gave Walnut Station its name in the first place, so news and newspapers moved between them in a matter of hours. The story itself didn't take 6 days to travel. It took 6 days to print because the New Ulm paper only printed once a week. The New Ulm Review told its readers the same sequence the Gazette had. The boys had powder wrapped in paper. They put it in a can and set a lighted firecracker on top, then weighted it with a stone and waited. When the firecracker died out, Willie Owens put a lighted match to the contents and practically blew his face off. And it ends the way the Gazette ended, with the doctor unable to say whether his eyes were injured or not. That is where the public record kind of stops, with hope and an open question. The answer never really made the papers from what I could see. Willie Owens lost his sight. Every account of his adult life describes a blind man. He went to a school for the blind, so whatever the doctors believed in July of 1880, it just didn't hold. You already saw the other half of this. 1 year earlier, the same newspaper had been telling the same town that Mary Ingalls was slowly recovering and her eyesight was improving as she gained strength. The same newspaper, the same village, the same concern and hope for one of their young people to pull through. But unfortunately, both times, wrong. One thing worth clearing up because it changes how we might read the Willie Oleson character. The Ingalls family left Walnut Grove in 1879. Willie's accident was in July of 1880. Laura was in Dakota Territory by then, and there is no evidence that she ever heard about Willie's accident. So when she sat down years later and wrote Willie Oleson into her books, she was writing the boy she last knew, a healthy little brat with a store owner for a father. That was the Willie she left behind, and that was the Willie she put on the page. And Michael Landon and NBC built their version on hers. 9 seasons of a smirking, scheming, perfectly sighted little boy because the books gave them nothing else to build on. So, just for the record, nobody erased Willie Owens' blindness storyline. His blindness simply happened after everyone stopped looking at him, so it never became a story for Laura Ingalls Wilder. The Owens family did not stay in Walnut Grove. They left around 1883 for California, and by 1891, they had landed in Tillamook County, Oregon, which is where Willie spent the rest of his life. He got married to a woman named Philadelphia Ann Watson, and they had 3 daughters together. Willie's family paper trail ends somewhere most people wouldn't think to look for anyone out of Walnut Grove, Minnesota. On October 18, 1954, the El Paso Herald-Post ran a funeral notice for his wife, Mrs. Philadelphia A. Owens, who had moved to Clint, Texas in 1939. Clint is a small town about 30 miles southeast of El Paso. Willie's wife died the day before her obituary was printed. She lived to be 89. She was survived by all 3 daughters she had with Willie, Mrs. Agnes Scherer of Clint, Mrs. Hugo Stelzig of Tillamook, Oregon, and Mrs. Georgia Henry of Carlton, Oregon. There were 11 grandchildren and 12 great-grandchildren. In the quick search that I did before this video, I did not find an obituary for Willie Owens. Genealogy records put his death in 1934, but nothing came up in the records I have access to, and plenty of small Oregon periodicals from that era were never digitized. So he may well have been written up somewhere that I just can't reach right now. What I can tell you is that when he was 10.5 years old, An Afternoon with an Oyster Can put him on the front page of the Redwood Gazette and inside of the New Ulm Review, and that somewhere between that day and the end of his life, he lost his sight for good. Willie Oleson got 9 seasons on network television, and in every one of them he could see. Willie Owens got That Afternoon, and a life almost nobody bothered to write about. There was another shopkeeper's son from the Midwest who had some trials and tribulations in his life. But his father ran a shop that was much bigger than the Walnut Grove General Store. His father was Marshall Field, and he owned the most luxurious department store in Chicago at the turn of the century. While Willie Owens lost his sight on a tragic afternoon because he was playing with something dangerous, Marshall Field Jr. lost his life because he was playing with something dangerous, a prostitute. And you can see his scandalous story here, and I'll leave links to it in the description and pinned comment of this video. Thank you so much for letting me be a part of your day. My sources for this story are on the screen.